Transgender kids in Texas are facing new barriers to accessing health care. The governor wants state agencies to investigate parents for child abuse if they are providing gender-affirming treatments for their transgender children and non-binary children as well, and to handle certain medical treatments as possible crimes. The orders are having an immediate and chilling effect on families, with some preparing to flee the state. Joining me now to discuss is Ricardo Martinez. Ricardo is the CEO of Equality Texas. It's a group that advocates for and works with LGBTQ plus families. Ricardo, thank you so much for being here. Start us off by just helping me to understand what this is looking like on the ground as the governor has called for these investigations. What does that look like for parents of these transgender kids and the children themselves?
Yeah, thank you for having me, number one, and for helping us bring attention to what's happening here in Texas, which is just a dramatic escalation of something that has already happened over the course of the last 2 years, which is government overreach, trying to control and erase LGBTQ people here in Texas. And we believe that all kids, regardless of class, race, gender, sexual orientation, or ability, deserve to live a happy and authentic life without government intrusion. And so, as you can imagine, parents are feeling this really deeply. They're distraught. Many of them are in despair. They can't sleep. They can barely do any work during the day, and they're not eating, right? And these are all stories that come directly from parents themselves. And it's really, really, really heartbreak having to live in anxiety and fear that someone could knock on your door and begin a false investigation of a loving family.
And beyond the children on an individual level who are impacted by this right now, there are, of course, long-lasting and nebulous mental health impacts here. I want to share one statistic with you. Over 2/3 of LGBTQ youth said recent debates over state laws that target transgender people have negatively impacted their mental health, and that's according to the Trevor Project. What do you think that government officials misunderstand about the impact of these laws on the mental health of children who are impacted by them?
That's a great point. Look, we just went through a session in 2021 when there were 76 anti-LGBTQ bills filed here in Texas. During the 3 special sessions, because we typically only have one regular session every 2 years, last year we had one regular session and 3 special sessions where 76 bills were filed. And we had so many debates about the humanity of LGBTQ people, primarily centered around trans kids. That is heartbreaking already. And we were already seeing the effects without any of these bills passing at the time. We were seeing a marked increase in bullying, harassment, physical assaults in school, violence against our communities across Texas, and that continues into 2022. One of the statistics that Trevor was able to pull is that from January 1st, 2021 till the end of August, more than 10,800 LGBTQ identified kids from Texas had made calls, emails, or texts to crisis centers that were operated by Trevor Project.
That's absolutely heartbreaking to hear. I know that the last time that you were on this show, you called it a solution in search of a problem. Why do you think that this issue has become such a political football in Texas? We already saw, as you mentioned, so many proposals related to the banning of trans athletes in sports, and now we're seeing that escalated to gender-affirming care. What do you make of that?
We don't have to guess here. There was a interview conducted last week with a senior advisor from the governor who said that this is politically advantageous, right? So this is, to me, a politically motivated move during election season at the expense of transgender kids, which is just really unforgivable, right? I think we are at a pivotal point where we get to decide who we are as Texans, who we are as Americans, and I don't think that we want to be defined by allowing the bullying, the pervasive bullying by government against innocent children.
I also wonder how hospitals are responding here because local hospitals, of course, play a role in mental health as well. But I wonder to what extent potentially the decision from the nation's largest pediatric hospital last week, Texas Children's Hospital, saying it would no longer offer gender-affirming treatment for transgender or non-binary youth. How does a statement like that impact the ability of local trans children to feel comfortable talking to healthcare providers about their options and more specifically the mental health services that are available to them?
That's a great question. So if we take a step back, we just have to remember that the opinion from the Office of the Attorney General has no legal effect and doesn't change Texas law. Ken Paxton and the governor can share their opinions and can write as many letters as they want, but ultimately it's up to the courts to interpret Texas law and the Constitution. And no court has ever found that affirming a trans kid's identity is considered child abuse, either here in Texas or across the country. So people don't have to actually comply with implementing the demands of a governor who's unilaterally trying to change law, which he can't. And so, this is one of those practical applications that we were worried about when you abuse your power and release an opinion in a letter that puts people, gets people to scramble, right? It's more questions than there are answers, and people just don't really know what to do. And in the case of Texas children, I want to find out exactly why they've decided to move in this direction and put even more kids in danger.
Yeah, we should mention that earlier this week, Judge Amy Clark Meacham of the Texas District Court of Travis County did issue a temporary restraining order against Abbott and the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, stopping them from investigating one family who would be impacted by this. And the judge is going to issue and weigh on a broader temporary injunction later on this week. But until then, like you mentioned, there isn't a full, legal standing for Abbott and for the Attorney General proposing that gender-affirming care is some form of child abuse. Given that, Ricardo, I wonder how frustrated are you at the speed with which hospitals have responded and stopped providing this care?
I'm horrified, right? Because I think that this moment in time requires political courage and kind of weighing pros versus cons, right? And here, I don't know why the safety and protection and life of transgender people wouldn't necessarily be a priority for institutions. And just want to note that Texas Children's is not the first hospital to really scale back care, right? The Genesis Clinic in UT Southwestern in Dallas has also done this.
I wonder what you would hope to see from neighboring states and, of course, from the federal government, from the White House in response to this. What are you not seeing done that you would hope for from healthcare providers in states nearby, for example?
I would love for more doctors to make gender-affirming care accessible to folks, right? Already transgender people, even before this, had a hard time accessing quality healthcare. So I think that this is a moment where you really have to live your values as a physician, right? And your oath to do no harm. And I think I would advise folks to follow the recommendations from the federal government, but also what I would hope is that folks follow the opinions and the consensus of every major credible medical association that defines healthcare for transgender kids as medically necessary and life-saving.
Yeah. And we have to leave you soon, Ricardo, but I want to end by just hearing a little bit more about how families are responding. Are they having to flee the state or, stop this care before their children have received all of the care that they need? What is that looking like?
Unfortunately, some are leaving. They have plans of leaving. We know of a handful of families who have plans already, but they shouldn't be leaving their state, right? They should be able to have happy and healthy lives here in Texas. And the responsibility of people in positions of power in Texas is to govern and protect all constituents, not just some. So I would hope that that families don't leave, and some of them don't have the option of leaving. So
Sure.
there's still a lot of despair happening here, and we're going to support parents and families as needed. And I would say that if any family is under investigation and needs assistance, they can come and email us or call us, info@equalitytexas.org, or reach out to any of our coalition partners, including the Transgender Education Network of Texas, the ACLU of Texas, Lambda Legal, the Texas Freedom Networks, or Human Rights Campaign.
Thank you for mentioning that, Ricardo. I really appreciate that. And thank you for giving us that context on what's happening on the ground in Texas, where there is a primary starting tomorrow, so you can go out and vote on all of that as well. Ricardo Martinez, CEO of Equality Texas, thanks so much.